get started. So obviously with our training at the moment, there's been, I guess, some people questioning, saying, hey, can we still retain lean muscle mass? Or, hey, can we still get the same stimulus to get some strength? Or can we still look at gaining some lean muscle mass? Or do we need to be doing this cardio or HIIT-based training? So this is what we'll be covering today. As you come on, guys, just please mute yourself if you can. That would be great. And Ben, use two of you. There we go. And we'll go from here. So with this, I think the first thing we want to talk about is the strength side of things. So the strength training or the weight-based training when we're doing it, whether we're using a backpack and we're using unilateral movements, can we still retain lean muscle mass, and in some cases start to get the stimulus to gain it? And I think it comes down to a couple of things. It can be coming down to reps or failure, or sequencing the exercises the right way, making sure we have a great mind-muscle connection, using unilateral exercises. So the first thing I really want to cover is, can we still maintain lean muscle mass in essentially general population, and also gain some lean muscle mass in this period of time for some people? And I guess, what's your thoughts around this, Ben?
So the answer is yes. Pretty much, if you want the short of it, it basically, you just got to think about the main principles of building muscle or retaining muscle. And so when we talk about building muscle, it's literally, when we think about what we can do over a given rep range, is probably the simplest way to explain it to the crew. So anything between 5 and around about 30 reps, as far as a set goes, is what we call the range of hypertrophy. So the stimulus that the muscles try and respond to, and in doing so, we either build muscle or retain. The caveat to that is we've got to be just very selective in the way that you go about designing the sequencing of the exercises, which I know you've done really well. So whether it's doing an isolation movement first, straight into a compound movement, so where you can basically push the set further and provide a stimulus to the muscles that gets harder and harder. Whether it's taking advantage of tempo and basically forcing the intent behind the exercise, that's really important as well. And the third component, which kind of ties into your HIIT and your metabolic conditioning, is the metabolic stress. So that in part actually helps part at a cellular level to help those muscles try and adapt to that as well.
Awesome. So, long and the short of it, yes, we still can gain lean muscle mass. I think, when we're looking at this team, if you're someone who's deadlifting 400 kilos, it might be hard to gain lean muscle mass in this period of time. But obviously everyone on the call right now probably is not. I'm not going to say you aren't, but I'm going to assume a lot of us aren't deadlifting 400 kilos right now. But for everyone else, if you can get yourself somewhere in towards the failure, around the 30 rep range, inside the movements that you're going through, we can still create the muscle stimulus that can lead to holding your lean muscle mass, and also creating essentially lean muscle gain. Saying the other things are in place, like the nutrition, the sleep, and the stress are in place as well. I think the biggest thing we come from this, guys, is we always come from a science point of view. And I really want to have this caveat to everyone listening. We are all about strength training at RBT. I have to say that. But in the current climate, we do the best with what we can do. So with this, we're utilizing our current training format to make us stronger, maintain lean muscle mass, gain some if possible, try and get them under unilateral movements so we can strengthen ourselves, so when we come back into the gym, we can be even stronger. So a lot of the exercise sequencing inside the weight-based sessions, you might see that there is essentially a lot of unilateral movement. So it's using a backpack or using a weight for one-legged squats, as far as split squats, or even pistol squats, where you're holding the bag or the weight down in front and you're squatting down to the bench. And with this, we're looking at controlling our tempo. So we're controlling the eccentric or the lowering phase of the exercise, so we can really get as much mind-muscle connection, so we can focus on what we're doing. And it's very hard to do a split squat or a Bulgarian split squat for 30 reps with a 3 seconds down, 3 seconds up, holding a 20-kilo backpack. You are definitely going to go under fatigue, create enough muscle trauma to create the stimulus with enough protein, with sleep and all the rest of it to create that lean gains, or to create the lean muscle mass to hold it, and even for some of us, create those gains that we're after. What are your thoughts around this, Ryan?
Yeah, definitely. So I think what Ben touched on, the biggest change in direction over the last like 10, 15 years is that obviously you can create growth. Traditionally viewed, you'd say like, oh, you got to do 6 to 12 reps to grow muscle. And that's completely flipped. So that's now 5 to 30. But if you think of it kind of logically, certain exercises lend themselves to different rep ranges. So while we have limited equipment, you're rarely going to do something like a deadlift or a chin up for 30 reps. It's just not practical. Your body will give in, your connective tissue will give in. But the things you will do for 30 reps when you're back in the gym, like 20 to 30 reps, are things like lunges and things like rows and, you know, Pendlay rows and arm variations and push-ups and stuff. So the stuff we're doing now is not that different to the stuff you're going to do when you're back in the gym within those rep ranges where you're still going to grow. So I think that's definitely like an important point, because there are the going to remain consistent across that time. So yeah, you can absolutely grow. And the other thing is like, if we have a 30-kilo backpack or a 20-kilo backpack, let's say a 30-kilo backpack, that's assuming that a 1-rep max is going to be 100 kilos. And, you know, not many of us here, maybe Benny and Trav, would do 100-kilo walking lunges, you know? So there's, for most exercises, and that's for a leg exercise, then if you take that and you apply it to like a row or a shoulder press, like hardly any of us are going to do 100 kilos for that. So we're going to actually fall within that rep range where we're going to grow optimally with 90% of the exercises that we're going to use.
Well, it's definitely, mate. So when we're looking at this, the main study, when we went through the 5 to the 30 rep range, was that through Schoenfeld? Is he the one that published the study, guys?
Yeah, there's been just a bunch of reviews that have come out, but yeah, he's headed up the majority of the meta-analysis into rep ranges for growth.
Fantastic. So guys, when we're looking at this isn't something that's made up. It's not something that's, you know, fabricated. It's something that's done and it's been researched, and, you know, it is science backed that we can get we can get a stimulus that can create this if we're going towards that failure around that 30 rep mark. It's the same as why we, you know, create an overload through partial rep ranges where we're going down essentially a 1 1/4 push-up. So you go down all the way up a quarter, back down, and all the way up. You're creating a higher overload. You're creating a longer time under tension, and you're being able to, I guess, it's recruiting more muscle fibers when we're going towards the failure of the exercise. Is that right, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, you know, what it points out is that it just takes a lot of thought on your behalf, my behalf, anyone who's writing the programs, is to not just, you can't just stack stuff willy-nilly and expect this hypertrophy response. Okay, so the way, like Ryan said, like certain exercises lend themselves well to low reps and others to high reps. You know, I tell the story quite often. Two of my good friends, Lauren and Shannon Green. Lauren is like a national champion powerlifter, 67-kilo pocket rocket, deadlifting 220 kilos and 200 kilos on top of her traps under the bar. And they come down and we jump on their podcast, and I go take them for a hypertrophy session. I'm the bodybuilder guy. And I'll have them doing some dips followed by some bench skull crushes. So some inverted skull crushes where you're kind of doing a close grip tricep press on a bench. And there is no way either of those two guys, girl and guy, are doing 10 reps of that. Not a chance, the way that I want it, because it all comes down to the intent. So it would be like a 3-second concentric, 3-second eccentric kind of intent behind it. And no one's coming over 10 reps, let alone 30 reps. And that's even when the gyms we've got full access to every piece of equipment in the gym. That's the utility behind some of these exercises. So it definitely can be done. It really, it calls into play what I think the bigger questions are, is like a lot of the mindset behind, like, you know, the behaviors of getting into the right frame of mind when you're doing your lifting session and stuff like that. And, you know, I think this is the greatest thing about having a group or a tribe is, you know, as Trav and I talk about James Clear's work with Atomic Habits all the time, you're making that intention, that implementation intention, you're committing to actually turning up and doing a session. Because I can tell you, I've had so many people reach out to me over my social media over the last like nearly 2 months now, who are so demotivated to try and train by themselves. They procrastinate all day long. and then they're too tired at the end of the day. So the session isn't being done at all. And this is one of the things that we talk about, the benefit from coaching, like having that accountability with a coach. And this is one of the benefits that Trav and I talk about all the time, about having a group, a support network, a tribe. Really powerful stuff.
Most definitely, mate. I think with that, we get to show up, we get to push our hardest, and we also get to focus on, the intent of the session, like you were saying. I want to go back to the unilateral movements just for 1 second, guys, and create a point around this. So when you're in the gym and you're doing a back squat for, essentially, say you're throwing 80 kilos on your back, and you can do 4 or 5 reps of that. Now, you might have to drop it down to 40 kilos to do 25 to 30 reps of controlled movements. You're still creating a stimulus. You might think, but I don't have 40 kilos right now. That's why we've moved to a lot of unilateral movements for the split squat. So if you have a backpack and you have 20 kilos in a backpack, like I've shown a lot of people how to do, it's very easy to get that done. Or you're holding in a front rack position and you have 20 kilos in your back, and we're going up to essentially 20 reps in that rep range, and we're going towards failure with that. It's saying that you can do a split squat with 60 to 70 kilos, and for me, I find that very, very tough myself for a good 6 to 10 reps. So when I lighten the load and control the tempo, a lot of us in here definitely are going to get the right stimulus, and definitely enough stimulus to create essentially, again, holding that lean muscle mass and even gaining that lean muscle mass, because we will be between that sort of 20 to 40% of our 1 RM, and controlling that, we very rarely will hit that 30 reps towards going towards failure. Now, when we're looking at something like a jump squat, and you can do more than the 30 reps, probably not going to create the lean gains, but we've got different benefits from an exercise like that instead. But when we come and focus really on the weight training side of things, and we have moved to lower body towards a lot of unilateral, so we can get enough load through it, control the exercise sequencing. So it's like you're creating an overload as far as like a tempo-based push-up, and you're really going for 10 reps. It's 3 seconds down, 3 seconds up, and that's like 60 seconds there, rolling over into a 20-kilo floor press with a backpack, and you're going for that 10 to 15 reps there. You're going towards failure at the end of those 10 to 15 reps, which is still giving you enough demand through your chest. And there was also a study with Gen Pop on essentially, it was only a 4-week study, but with Gen Pop versus bench press and push-ups and increased muscle size and also strength. And Ryan, you actually showed me this study. Do you want to have a talk about it for a second?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is a really good study because it's applicable to RBT members. So they're Gen Pop, but they're moderately trained individuals, which is sort of similar to everyone at RBT. And basically what they found is in that study, the way that they overloaded people's movements was through making the push-ups more difficult. So it was like a variation of a push-up across the 4 weeks. And they basically tested their bench press, their 1 rep max at the start and at the end. And their one group, which was the push-up group, was obviously doing increasingly difficult variations of push-ups across the 4 weeks. The other group was just doing a bench press periodized progression cycle. And what they found was the amount of improvement was similar at the end of the study. And basically, studies that had been run previous to this had been using more high rep ranges for the push-ups, more endurance-based work. Whereas this study, it used the overload of making the actual movement more difficult to progress their strength over that period of time. And I guess the important thing there is, like, similar to RBT, how varying the movements, there's also variations in the tempo. So the tempos are getting, increasing. You might just with your own training as you get stronger, be slowing down, going for the full 4 reps, getting 6 to 8 reps that are really high quality reps. You're still going to improve when you get back into the gym and you can start bench pressing again. So I think that's the biggest takeaway is these guys, they improve their strength, they improve their hypertrophy, so their muscle growth, just by making those simple movements more difficult, which is so simple what we're doing.
It's exactly what we're doing as well. So yes, I guess the downfalls this study was only 4 weeks, and it was over 23 males who were moderately trained. But when we're looking at the COVID-19, over the next 8 weeks, that gyms are reopening and we can get those push-up progressions, and when we come back into the gyms, we can take the strength that we've gained from using the push-ups and push them into our other training and have higher levels of strength in the gym as well. I guess another thing I want to touch on is how can we increase the ability to have the hypertrophy or the gains or the holding our lean muscle mass can be a mind-muscle connection. And I think that's such a crucial thing of focusing what you're doing. Ben, you talk sometimes about mind-muscle connection. Like, do you have anything you want to share about this?
Yeah. So look, I mean, as with a lot of conversations that revolve around weights training, often the bodybuilders, the bros, the meatheads, the guys that have packed on a lot of muscle are the butt end of a lot of jokes until scientists come out somewhere down along the lines and do enough studies to go, oh, these guys have got a bit of a point. They're not wrong all the time. And so when we talk about like really focusing on what you're doing and developing that great connection between the muscle that you're training whilst you're completing the movement pattern and giving it your all, we're starting to see that does have positive ramifications in the outcomes that you're looking for your muscle growth. And the conversation I've been steering towards with every person in my client groups over the last couple of months is that you've always got to look for the opportunities, right? And right now, this is an opportunity to be looking at, focusing on the skill acquisition, focusing on having the time to work on the recovery aspects. Okay, so we haven't even touched on like the other side of growth and adaptation is, sleep management, stress management, and having a great schedule. Now, I know everyone's going through different hardships. We all are, but it also provides an opportunity, or maybe I know I have more time, you know what I mean, to focus on things that can help me recover better, work on mobility parts that I'd kind of been saying I don't have time to do this right now. So those are the aspects, as Trav pointed out earlier, in that right now the conversation has to be about doing the most with the least and using this time period as a pre-season. This is a pre-season for when the heavens open up again and we can get back into the gym. You know what I mean? So everything that you do now can set the scene for, better movement patterns, better mind-muscle connections, better foundation for lifting once we get back under the load.
So when we look at something like this, a mind-muscle connection, it's actually focusing on the muscles, like having pure intent. It's like if I'm doing a split squat and I'm focusing on that quad, I'm having full intention that I'm engaging that quad. If you don't know how to engage your quad, like lay on the ground, flex your quad. Like that's what it's like to engage it. And then when you're going into that, single leg squat or Bulgarian split squat with that left leg up, it's like focusing on the actual movement involved. And I think the biggest thing when we're going towards these unilateral movements, we're not just getting those prime movers engaged when we're doing these movements. We have our adductors working, we have our glutes working, we have all the little other muscles. When you're doing a big gross movement like a back squat, okay, our primary movements tend to take over, and the other movements, if we don't work them enough in our program, they can atrophy a little bit. The stabilizers aren't working. But when we go into unilateral movements, all those stabilizer muscles, they start firing, they get stronger, and over this period of time, we can actually get stronger through a unilateral movement. And if all our stabilizers are stronger, if we're going deep into the range of movement through a split squat or Bulgarian split squat, opening up those hips, when we carry that across back into a back squat, you should be able to get stronger into the back squat. You should be able to lift heavier when we get back into the gym because you have more muscles firing, because during this period, you've awoken them all that might have been quiet for so long. Do you agree with something like that, Ryan?
Definitely. That's funny you say. It's like the first time I put in split squats I actually put in Bulgarian split squats as my first movement. I put on 15 kilos in that training cycle on my back squat without back squatting. So what you're doing in that period of time is you're correcting a lot of deficiencies. So if you have one leg that's consistently just gotten stronger and stronger and you've become more reliant on it, you might have, let's say when you're back squatting, when you hit shift onto that good leg, you use that leg to drive up. This period of time, you're basically dedicating to correcting those deficiencies. So things like Travis and Ben were talking about in terms of creating a mindful mind-muscle contraction and tension, that's actually like a form of mindfulness. So you're putting your mind in that muscle, you're developing that weakened muscle that's going to have a poorer neural connection, and you're going to balance those two things up over this period of time. So when you go back to the gym, not only are you stronger through your double leg exercises, but you're actually less likely to do an injury. because those things can creep sort of like under the surface over a period of time. You become really reliant on one leg and then something goes.
Definitely. What about yourself, Ben? Do you have anything to add to that, or?
Yeah, I think for the most part, like, when I thought about the problems that you have to solve when training from home, like, and it comes to like sort of splitting the body into parts. You guys raised some fantastic points there on the opportunity to look at some of the areas that get neglected, and really like the things that only stuck out in my mind that would be harder to train would be like the traps, for instance. It is hard to get an exercise at home for a lot of people where they're going to utilize traps in that sense. But that's, that leaves 90% of the rest of the body where you can do a really good job. And to go and work out your traps takes a fair bit of equipment. You've got to find some really heavy stuff. So look, I
It's
think
pretty easy to do, mate. You just have to go out to the back, do some gardening, and carry your wheelbarrow around, and then we're all good.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you're not wrong there, finding something to do a farmer's walk with or some gardening and something like that. It can be done not in the gym session. But yeah, I think you guys have all, touched on a lot of relevant points.
Awesome, guys. We're going to move away from the weight-based side of things. If you have any questions on the weight-based training that you're currently doing and how it can be improved, or what you should be feeling, or can you get anything, please chuck them in the chat box. I'm going to move into the aerobic side of things and the anaerobic HIIT-based sessions right now, and go, why are we doing this? Because a lot of people say, oh, I don't like a crucial one for a lot of people is it's like back when the gyms are open, it's like, oh, I don't like Metcons, or I don't like the conditioning-based training. And anyone who's listening to this probably roll their eyes, if that is one of you, because like you're like, oh, I don't like that. I just like lifting heavy. When the reality is that the HIIT sessions, the metabolic sessions, the aerobic sessions, the anaerobic sessions, they are so crucial to so many other benefits, but also there's a carryover in your strength training as well. From these sessions. So they aren't just going to help you get fitter, they will help you get stronger, they will help you become just a better human being. So I want to talk about a couple of things first. Is one, the psychology or the mental well-being, first off, from the HIIT-based sessions. So the endorphins after it, and how you're feeling good for the next 12 hours after a HIIT session. So the psychological benefits of HIIT training, what do you have to share with that, Ben?
Yeah, I think, look, I'm definitely not the Metcon guy, as you know, Trav. So, and I've said that for a long time, but by that token, I have said more than ever before in my life in the last 2 months. I am doing things now that I haven't previously thought as having the correct context for myself. And so I've changed my own playbook. You know what I mean? I've changed the playbook for heaps of my clients. And a lot of it has been in this aerobic regard around the psychology. Okay. And that is that, a lot of my clients are stressed. A lot of them are, in their house more than ever. Their output, their walking, everything is like way, way, way down. And, throughout the check-ins, you're just realizing that there's a lot going on up here. And so one of the best ways that we have to manage this physiology of stress. So when your hormones are up and about, those hormones are really, from an evolutionary perspective, kind of like interlinked with you taking an action. So you doing something, going and training, running away from the lion, doing whatever you got to do. So you implement the aerobic training, the HIIT training, whatever it is. And, that way you can actually utilize those hormones for what they're for, get that stress reduction. And just to tie it in with the muscle and hypertrophy, the one thing you do not want is inactivity and stress, because that'll strip muscle off you like nothing on the planet. Okay. So that's like, lying down in the hospital bed for 4 weeks. Okay. So inactivity and stress hormones, absolutely catabolic from a muscle building or muscle retention perspective.
Awesome. What about yourself, Ryan? As far as the psychological or the psychology side of things, doing the HIIT or aerobic-based training, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I think, runners high, as you hear people talking about runners high often. So it's just like a different form where people are getting endorphins the same sort of way. A lot of the time when you have someone that's new to training, a lot of their weight training is actually dedicated to skill acquisition. So you don't get that exhausted effect where you've given 110% at the end of a session. That's why when a lot of people first come to RBT at the end of the session, they're like, you know, like, what else can I do? And you have to be like, look, you've done everything that you need to do to get progress for the long term. You need to go home and rest and recover. So for people that really do like feeling that they've given something their all, and especially over this time where it's, you know, hard to feel productive, especially if you're not working, like definitely know that feeling right now. It's important to have something there to, like, you know, give 110% towards, so that you can come out of the session feeling, you know, refreshed and like you've given something everything you got.
Awesome, mate. So with this, I guess the next thing I want to talk about, the importance of the, you know, HIIT-based sessions and it on, you know, blood pressure decreasing, on heart rate, on the immune response from it as well. So I'll start across back with you, Ryan. Like, what are your thoughts on the HIIT sessions and actually becoming a healthier person?
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of resting heart rate, so decreasing resting heart rate, all these global markers of health and cardiovascular health especially, these are all long-term things that are really important. The other thing that you're seeing is obviously calorie intake is going to be higher over this period of time because everyone's confined to their home. And what we know from the research is people eat the most calories are at home. So anything you can do to combat the negative side effects, both mental and physical, of this quarantine period through aerobic training is beneficial. And what you see with aerobic training is the time that it takes to accrue those positive effects on things like blood pressure and heart rate are only about 1 to 2 weeks for it to start to take a really positive effect. So that's a really great argument for doing that over this period of time. And then also, if you're someone that's, you know, more into just the physique side of things, you know, CrossFitters, so type 1 muscle fibers, which are endurance muscle fibers, they have half the growth capacity of type 2. That's why people train with weights, obviously. But you're still going to maintain muscle from doing interval-based circuit training along with those health effects, because you do get a growth response from type 1 muscle fibers. So to only do exercises that are going to trigger type 2 hypertrophy means that you're going to miss out on type 1 hypertrophy in the long run. And that's obviously not a great thing as well.
Yeah, it's almost like you're digging into untapped reserves of potential muscle growth, you know, like with the opportunity of, like, you know, going through this more metabolic style training.
Yep.
Most definitely. I think with this, guys, for me, like, the mental well-being is, like, I look at, like, the habit formation, and, you know, I'm not going to do weight-based training every single day of the week, for me personally. So I love a good HIIT session. And like, I'm 90 kilos. So, you know, it's, you know, doing some of the workouts, if anyone's seen me move, I am not the most graceful, but I enjoy them because I understand, for me, there's always a keystone habit. And then this keystone habit is the domino for every single one of the other habits. So, like, as we know, a domino, it knocks over a bigger one and a bigger one and a bigger one. And for me, I personally need to train daily. It's a habit that I need for my mental well-being. I feel good. And that domino, the small domino of the nutrition, of the training, bang. Then all of a sudden, my nutrition gets on point. Bang. When my nutrition gets on point, my stress gets on point. Bang. My stress is on point. My sleep gets on point. Bang. And the fundamentals that create a body transformation all come from me, is from training. And that HIIT session for me can be from, you know, 10 minutes. I might just crunch out as many reps as I can in burpees, or, you know, do some 100-meter sprints, or, you know, the RBT HIIT sessions that we're currently doing. So I can do this. And this domino habit, because I have a conscious understanding of me and my habit formation, this is my keystone habit that knocks over every other habit. And when I get all my key 4 habits together, I'm a better human being for my partner. I'm a better human being for my kids. I'm a better human being for, you know, work and for everyone around me. So that's one of the main reasons, like, I love the HIIT sessions, because it gives me variety, which is also a human need. So there's 6 human needs, and one of them is variety. So it gives me variety in there, and it gives me that keystone habit that knocks over everything else, which makes me a better person. I think for me, that's my mental well-being and why I like to do the HIIT-based sessions personally. Not only that is, it's great as far as, you know, again, the bigger you are, you know, your blood pressure can tend to go up, and, you know, your heart rate might not be as good. So for me, It's great to keep my blood pressure in check. It's great to have my resting heart rate low because, whilst you might focus on when we're in the gym, you might have these aesthetic-based goals, and you might go, okay, great, I'm going to gain lean muscle mass, I'm going to get to 8% body fat, whatever it is. I think you can still get fat loss right now, 100%. You can still get some gains for a lot of us right now, 100%. But you could create some great goals right now. Great goals of your waking resting heart rate. Great goals of like what your blood pressure is. Now, if you create these goals and over the next 6 weeks, I'm going to decrease my blood pressure. I'm going to decrease my resting heart rate, and I'm going to become a healthier person so I live longer. Those goals are actually more important than all the aesthetic goals as well. So this HIIT training that we're doing that is so vital to us, as human beings, it's great to create some goals around that right now, and you can create tangible targets. Oh, this is my resting heart rate. Okay, this is where it needs to be. And you can track it each day over the next sort of 6 weeks and, have a game of how low you can get it or how low you can get your blood pressure. And again, to do that, you have to take care of your stress. You have to take care of your sleep. You have to take care of those fundamentals that make you a better person. With this, what about, do you have anything about the heart rate and blood pressure you want to add, Ben?
No, but I just want to add to what you said then, which was really good. And actually, before I even do that, this is why you credit people, because I literally at 11 a.m. did a Zoom with the girls, and Trav's story about the Keystone habit about him training, I completely stole. And I saw Pip on the line here, and Pip was on the call at 11, and she knows that I credited him because I stole it straight from his mouth. But to add to what you're saying, the people that are most successful in this game, right, they're the ones that don't define themselves by any one thing. Because when things change and you can't have that anymore, you're a lost cause, right? So you need to have a set. You just have to realize that reality is reality, right? Everyone's going through stuff at the moment. And if you only define yourself by something which is now really hard, then have the ability to adapt with that. And, we're talking about these KPIs or these key performance indicators, so with RBT, we always talk about, look, have strength goals, but have body composition goals. There's times when body composition goals are really hard to improve. Okay. So like maybe you're postpartum, you've just had a baby. Okay. Maybe you're just going through a relationship breakup. Like there might be other external stresses in life in which they're just not conducive to that one goal, and defining yourself by that is going to be a really poor option for you psychologically. So look at the other parameters that you can focus on. So, things that you're talking about right there, like stress management, like you're talking about some quantitative stuff like blood pressure and heart rate. I've got like 2 wearables on because that's how crazy I am. I've got the wristwatch and the ring to like look at my sleep metrics. And I've been doing a ton of sleep metric stuff with my clients because obviously their schedules have changed and some of them have a lot more flexibility. And I don't think flexibility is such a great thing. I think a whole heap of structure is great with a little bit of a layer on top of flexibility, because people start going all over the place and procrastinating on everything when there's too much flexibility. So having the ability to look at these other metrics, focus on them, and also from the long run, no one ever wants to feel like they're dieting all year long. Like that's my hate it when I hear that, especially like it comes from mainly from female clients going, I feel like I spend my life dieting. You know what I mean? So throughout the year, you want to be able to have the ability to have that focus change on things. And right now, the focus can be on this, making the most with the least, like these conditioning aspects that you're talking about, the intent and the skill acquisition with these hypertrophy style setups within the training regimes. And, as we said before, like looking at the holistic picture between stress management, sleep, and this hypertrophy, that combination of everything lines you up for total success.
I think I just want to add one more thing to that before we go into the aerobic or HIIT-based sessions and how they help with metabolic flexibility and what that is. But I want to add to it. It's like, I think, right now you have to understand, obviously we're all in a bit of an isolation bubble. And if you have an all or nothing mindset, the easiest way to have to essentially talk about an all or nothing mindset, someone who, I'm sticking to my diet, I slip on my diet, so I might have a cupcake or an ice cream, and it's like, I stuff my diet, and then for the next 2 or 3 days, you just overeat, and then you go, I'm going to start again on Monday. Because as soon as you went all in, you weren't in at all. So that's an all or nothing mindset. And all of us know someone who's been like this, or we've been that ourselves. Like, that's okay. No judgment here. Like, I 100% am guilty. But like, what we have to look at is we've never really had this, like a lot of people haven't had this all or nothing mindset as far as training, right? There is a bit as far as like, oh, I've only got 20 minutes, so I may as well not train. Okay, some people have done that. That's an all or nothing mindset, because 15 minutes is better than no minutes, 10 minutes is better than no minutes, so it's 5 minutes, right? You can still get your heart rate moving. But when we're looking at this, a lot of people have had access to gyms and access to all this equipment. So now they're saying, if I can't do a back squat, I'm not going to train. Or if I can't, throw 100 kilos on a bench press, I'm not going to train. And I think this all or nothing mindset as far as gym access and equipment access is such a thing that we haven't encountered before as a society that I've seen. So what we have to look at is we have to change our mindset. And I think, Abraham Maslow talks about self-actualization. And he's like, becoming the best version of yourself. And, becoming the best version of yourself, I believe, is every challenge you look at, okay, how can this challenge make me better? Or how can I get the best out of this situation that I'm currently in? So if I'm looking at it, it's like, heck, all I've got is a backpack with 20 kilos. I don't complain about the backpack and go, oh, I may as well do nothing because I've only got a backpack with 20 kilos. It's like you have to use this phrase, and I can't remember who I got it from. I think it was Brian Johnson. He talks about OMS. And OMS, it says, obstacles make me stronger, right? So it's like, OMS. It's like, obstacles make me stronger. So it's like, okay, cool. This backpack I'm going to use right now, I'm not going to complain about it. I'm going to use it, and it's going to make me stronger because I'm going to use, better tempo. I'm going to use better form. I'm going to use, my stabilizing muscles. I'm going to be 100% in. I'm not going to miss a session. It's going to make me stronger with my nutrition. It's going to make me stronger with my sleep so I can focus on other things. And because maybe the limited equipment, it's going to make you a stronger person. If we can take the current circumstance with our training, rather than a negative, we see it as a positive, and we find the silver lining to it. It's like, obstacles make me stronger. If I step up to the plate and use this backpack today, when I get back into the gym, I'm going to crush it even harder. The stabilizing muscle is going to fire. I'm going to crush that PB when I get back to doing what I wanted to do. I think you need to reframe the way you look at sessions and go, this is going to make me a stronger person. And I am so happy right now that I have limited equipment because it's making me focus on the stuff that I've neglected over the last year, over the last 6 months. And I'm going to focus on that stuff because the world is showing me that's what I need to do right now. And I think if you change that, then you can't see that as a negative. All of a sudden, you're moving into your training in a positive mindset. And if you come into your training in a positive mindset, there's a difference between a negative state and a positive state. It's the stories we tell ourselves and all the rest of it. Nothing good comes from being negative, okay? Nothing, right? So if you come into it going, obstacles make me stronger, I can't wait for today, all of a sudden you're taking a different psychology and intent into that session. So the session is automatically better because you took that psychology into the session. I just wanted to sort of cover off that with a bit of a rant, guys. Metabolic flexibility and aerobic training. Like, Ben, as far as this, like, what is metabolic flexibility is, and how does the HIIT-based sessions help us with this?
Yeah, so I mean, metabolic flexibility basically is talking about a process in which your body can sort of choose between burning carbohydrates for energy or sugars and burning fats for energy. Okay, so at any point in time, there's a certain ratio of those things going on. And having the ability for the body to be able to sort of use them in a way that best suits our goals is obviously advantageous. So one of the things when it comes to working out, especially when you're doing like a lot of the conditioning or strenuous workouts within a given time frame, is you can lower your glycogen supply. So glycogen is kind of the stored carbohydrate. You store a lot of it in your liver and you store a lot of it in your muscles. Now, glycogen is a great thing. It does come from your carbs. But when you go through these depleting workouts, what your body's forced to do is like use these things very efficiently and get better at doing so. And so this is one thing that, we'll see as coaches, and it's a bit of a nuance within the realm of like nutrition design, is that like we might start off, a client with 150 grams of protein, 150 grams of carbs and 60 grams of fat, very typical kind of ratio for someone. And then, every now and then we'll get a client where we're just sort of noticing it doesn't really seem to be utilizing this ratio of carbs and fats that well. Perhaps we'll flip things around and go for a little bit of a lower carbohydrate diet, or alternatively, perhaps we'll implement some strategies with training that perhaps aren't in their standardized programming. So if they were only doing weights training and they weren't really getting themselves in a position where, and whether it be just due to the, like they're a beginner, like maybe you're still kind of really getting to terms with being able to push yourself quite hard. So you're not able to go through that depletion phase and sort of force the body to get better at these utilization of carbs and fats. So one of the ways you can kind of bypass that inability for a beginner to do so is to put yourself through a metabolic demanding session. That being Metcon, conditioning. You don't really have a choice just by the nature of like how you're doing it. Doesn't really depend on like some of the more complex skill that you have to apply to the weights training stuff. And so you bypass that, or the best scenario is obviously to integrate both of them together. Like Ryan talked about before about utilizing type 1 fibers, they've got growth potential. It's not as great as type 2, what you get with the weights, but it's still potential sitting there. So why wouldn't you take it?
So with this, as someone can be more overweight, they can have a decrease in metabolic flexibility. Am I right by thinking that, like the heavier someone is, they can be less metabolically flexible?
Yeah. Again, I would probably, just for the sake of like keeping it less specific than just talking about metabolic flexibility, just talk about the like less insulin sensitive. So insulin is kind of like one of the hormones that's involved in the utilization of carbohydrate. And generally, and that's one of the other aspects of training, weights training, aerobic training, is you can get a better insulin sensitivity. And being insulin resistance means you're on the path to type 2 diabetes. It's associated with a lot of poor health outcomes. You do not want to go there. So the best scenario for someone who has that is to look at training. And as a side note, I don't know if I mentioned this before or it was in the 11 o'clock Zoom. Sorry, my brain's playing up. But poor sleep, will leave you in a state of like insulin resistance, similar to that of a type 2 diabetic. So right now, especially we've just had daylight savings down here. So the last 4 weeks, I've been having a lot of conversations with people that it's been a perfect storm of circadian disruption with sleep disruption, exhaustion, fatigue. You basically have daylight savings compounded with more time spent indoors, which is the exact opposite of what you would want around daylight savings time, because the natural light that you get from the sun helps entrain that and strengthen that circadian rhythm, which leads to better sleep and awake cycles, which obviously leads to better insulin sensitivity. So any of that being an issue, one of the things we can do to benefit from a practical standpoint is do our sessions at the same time every day if possible. Okay, so you want training to be what they call a Zeitgeber, which is basically a circadian cue. It's a signal that done at that time, that this is the time I train, and the body goes, okay, it's 8 o'clock, it's training time. Same thing goes with your meals, okay? So if you were eating at 7 a.m., 10 a.m., 1 p.m., and it was the same every day, that's gonna help strengthen this circadian rhythm, strengthen the sleep cycle, strengthen your insulin sensitivity. All these kind of things become even more important in the current world we're living in.
So why do we want to be insulin sensitive or move towards insulin sensitivity?
Well, a couple of reasons. Like the first thing is we want to stay away from diabetes and obesity, right? Just in case I didn't make that point clear enough.
What about the gains?
Yeah. So like if you imagine your muscles or your cells like let's just say a sphere for a second. So it's like a ball, right? And on the outside we have these receptors, and basically we want sugar to come into the muscle cells so that we can use it. So in order to do that, we have to have a certain amount of insulin sensitivity. If we don't have that sensitivity and we have this resistance, then basically outside is all the sugar in the circulation and it's not getting inside the cells. And what that leads to is a couple of things. It means that at a cellular level, your muscles are starving, right? They don't have the energy. So you're gonna tank. You're not gonna have aerobic capacity. You're gonna feel like hypoglycemic and lightheaded and you're not going to be able to perform well. Secondary to that has to go somewhere. And this is how we see overeating with insulin resistance and a fat gain, so obesity. Okay, so we're going to like store what's not needed, and that leads to those health outcomes as well.
Awesome. So I guess the more side you are on the insulin resistance side, is the harder it is for us to get lean muscle gains. And the further it is across the insulin sensitivity side, like you can utilize the macronutrients that we're trying to consume to help support lean muscle gain.
Yeah, absolutely. And this kind of came on the 11 o'clock call, so you guys can tune into that when I upload it. But some of the like basic nutritional strategies you want to do is like you want to have a high protein diet. It helps stabilize your blood sugar levels. Double whammy, that's what you should be doing anyway, because you weights train and you need protein to recover. You can think about incorporating enough fiber in the diet. So fiber, again, will help like sort of regulate the absorption of the starches and the sugars that you accrue with that meal, and basically have that help you as well. So these are things that, again, like Ryan, I think pointed it out before, like people are spending more time at home, and often we talk about food environment. By the way, if you want a whole bunch of good reading resources, I think I gave out like 7 books for all the girls to read. One of them was The Hungry Brain by Stephan Guyenet, where he talks a lot about food environment, which I think is a very good conversation now that everyone's spending a lot of time at home, where we fall into these habits of snacking, eating the wrong meals, like overeating at dinner whilst watching like the 8:30 like crappy reality TV, whatever it was. So yeah, if anyone ever wants any resources on any of the stuff we're talking about today, I've got books, suggestions like that. I can just throw books through the screen at you. So
with this, I'm going to like carry a very thin thread connecting things together. So aerobic training can help with insulin sensitivity, the HIIT-based sessions. Is that correct, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And
there's like any type 2 diabetic that can't, sorry, you go.
And then insulin sensitivity can help with lean muscle gains. Ergo, the aerobic training that you're doing with the HIIT sessions can help with lean muscle gain.
Oh, absolutely. And I can draw an even thicker line between those if you want. I'll take your thin line and raise you. And what that is that your aerobic capacity is going to be a function of like how you can train anaerobically. So if you're tanking out like during a set of squats because you can't breathe and you break tightness, okay, that's part of the leak in the system. You know what I mean? So this is why we talk about having an aerobic capacity prior to going and lifting heavy. And I'll tell you now, because I follow a lot of powerlifters on my Instagram because they're crazy and they're pretty funny. But most of them now, they're kicked out of their gyms. You know what those guys are doing? They're doing aerobic training because they know goddamn well that they've been neglecting it for ages. Okay. And so these guys are out there like just pushing stuff and like doing like burpees and star jumps, and pretty funny because these are guys like 150 kilos, but they know that they need it. And what they're seeing is the opportunity, because they're not going to sit there and whinge that they can't get under and lift 400 kilos. They're addressing the opportunity.
I guess a big thing as well inside, like, RBT training in the gyms, like, why the Metcon days and why our HIIT sessions are so important right now. If you're doing like a superset with a back squat and RDL, and then you only have 60 seconds rest going back into that back squat, and if you don't have the capacity to recover before you're getting back into the back squat, you start shifting into a different energy system, which will get a decline in performance, decline in volume lifted, so reps times sets times weight. And then that also, when you have a decrease in volume, you get a decrease in essentially the progressive overload that we're trying to create to get those lean muscle gains. So by doing the HIIT sessions, it allows us to recover or to enhance our ability to recover faster in the rest periods when we get back into the gym. So when we're doing our heavy lifting, we can actually use the correct energy systems and get the best bang for your buck inside the time that we're training. Do you agree, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. The limiting factor, if the limiting factor is no longer your tension that you can apply to your muscle because you're too busy gasping for air, then you're going to get less or not as good results overall. And it's, I think what Ben was touching on, it's like the difference between being in a high energy flux and a low energy flux. So high energy flux, you eat more, you perform better, your training's better, you're going to get better results. If you eat less and do less, yes, the overall outcome of your body weight might be the same, but it's suboptimal to where you could be. And it's also an easier thing, especially with females, to manipulate your intake rather than your energy expenditure levels, because those are harder habits to set. So if you're already in a high energy flux phase where you're doing more and, you know, eating more, it's much easier to change your nutrition there to the exercise. So yeah, definitely agree.
Awesome. Do you agree with that, Ben, as well?
Yeah.
Awesome. I think the biggest thing you have to understand, guys, is everyone working at home that Ben did talk about earlier, Ryan did talk about earlier, if you averaged 10,000 steps a day, for pre-isolation, and you've decreased to around 3,000 steps a day right now, which is actually really easy to be at 3,000 steps because you're not moving around much and you're just inside your house. If you're like an 80-kilo person, that can be a decrease of about 300 calories a day, okay? And, that's over the week, it's like 2,100 calories. Over the space of the month, obviously, somewhere around like 8,500 to 10,000 calories. So, if you're eating the same and we've decreased our calories burned on a daily basis just by living by 10,000 calories a month, you're going to start gaining essentially weight, okay, if you're still eating the same and you weren't on a deficit. So it's why, again, doing the HIIT session is going to increase your output to make sure you're actually burning the calories to stay inside either a maintenance or inside a calorie deficit. The other thing you could think about is actually having, during this time, every 3 or 4 hours, setting an alarm, getting up and going for a walk. If you go for a 20-minute walk at about 4.8 kilometers an hour, to be precise, depends on your height. If you're like, 5'8" or something like that, you walk about 2,250 steps. So if you do that 3 or 4 times a day, just like, 8 a.m., 20-minute walk, 12 noon, 20-minute walk, 4 p.m., 20-minute walk, you're going to walk about 7,500 steps consciously during this time. And then you still walk your 2,500 to 3,000 steps a day just by walking around the house. You'll then start, staying at that 10,000 step marker, and you'll stay at the calories that you were before, pre-COVID, pre-isolation. Guys, go Ben.
I just want to jump in on that because so one of my boys, actually, he works for us, Luke. I also coach him. He sort of said, I think it was him anyway. He sort of said, hey, I was thinking about like setting an alarm on my watch for every hour doing 10 burpees. And I was just like, yeah, you won't do that for very long. And he had to laugh, right? Because I called him, I was like, you won't do that for very long. And I said, okay, I want you to reframe this, right? And at least what you were saying then. And this just comes back to another James Clear, Atomic Habits. So you can basically just read his book and realize that I've just pitched everything that guy's ever said. But is to do it before you are going to have a reward. So for me, when I knock off for the day, it's like 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I go sit on my couch. The couch is the reward because when I'm done, I'm done. So I don't want to have to do like chores, extra work, like look at messages from clients or anything once I hit the couch. So that's my reward, and I know it is. So I have a couple of things that like I'll always look at. I calendarize things that I'm trying to make habits within my calendar so that there's a notification. And at this point in time, it would be like take Ruben and the dog for a walk. Like, so I'll go out there and do that before I come back and sit on the couch. When if my kitchen's getting too messy, okay, and it's getting towards the end of the day, then as I'm walking from my office, then the kitchen, then the couch to knock off, I'll say, okay, before I just sit on the couch, I'm just going to put one dish away. Okay. Now I never just put one dish away. I'm going to clean the whole kitchen because all I needed was momentum, right? So I didn't say, I'd like give myself a huge amount of chores. I just needed to go put one thing away and then the whole kitchen gets cleaned. So when you're going to do this extra output, like if it is something that you don't enjoy, if you do enjoy it, like there's people out there who go, man, I'll go for a walk whenever I want. Perhaps think about attaching it, like habit stacking it, as Trav and I and James would say, with something you consider a reward afterward. And that reward could be whatever you just naturally do and enjoy as part of your day. Okay, tie it in, and then the output or the movement or whatever gets done before it.
I think that's the key thing Ben just mentioned, right, guys? Like, you're not always going to feel like you want to train, but actions don't follow feelings. Feelings follow actions. So once you start training, then you feel like training and you feel good. So it's like, no one regrets a workout they did. I think that's so crucial. And I actually listened to something this morning from James Clear. So The guy's a smart dude. Go read his blog. But like, he was saying something. I think we all could do this over the next 42 days, so 6 weeks, right? What you should do is you grab like a jar, you fill it full of marbles, and over the put 42 marbles in it for 42 days. And inside there, there's, essentially, 42 of them, most of them are blue, but 7 of them are red, okay? So you got 7 red marbles inside it. So there's 35 blue, 7 red ones. Who likes like online shopping here, like buying a clothes or a dress or something for the gym? Like, if you like that, fantastic. Okay, so over the next 42 days, which is obviously 6 weeks, what you can do, guys, is, every time you train, and if you want to train 7 days a week, okay, now you can go for a walk and classify that as training if that's what you want to do, but you can have a reward mechanism from this. And I haven't really thought about a reward mechanism until I heard this morning for training, because yes, there's an energy reward, and people are like, yeah, I want a motivational high, but a lot of the times it's just not the same, okay, because everyone likes the instant gratification of a great reward, like, buying something online or eating a donut. But with this, out of those 7, when you pick a blue one out, you just put it in another jar. Pick a blue one out, you put it in another jar. And your goal is to get all the marbles from one jar to another jar. But if you close your eyes and one day you happen to grab that red marble, that red marble to you could be $50 worth of online shopping, okay? Or it could be like the dress that you want, or it could be just essentially something you want that could be a reward for you. So it's like over the time of the 6 weeks, inside the marble jar, there is 7 rewards, okay? And they're done at random. So every single person also loves surprises, okay? Everyone loves it. And everyone loves to win something. So you have 7 red marbles, you have 35 blue marbles, and you're picking up blue ones. And the day you grab that red one, it's like, yes, I won today. What this does is it makes you want to train every day, because every day you train, you're one step closer to moving a marble and one step closer to hopefully choosing the right one. And now I see some people on here, you can't open your eyes and just start picking out the red marbles 7 days straight for the first 7 days. You have to close your eyes and put your right hand in the jar, grab the marble out, and it's pot luck. And that pot luck gives you a higher boost, okay? And all of a sudden, you're getting this feedback mechanism that's ingraining the habit further into you with instant gratification as well. So we're getting delayed gratification, we're getting instant from feeling great, we're getting delayed from changing our body, and we're getting instant once a week from essentially gaining a prize from it as well. I thought about that today. I was like, wow, I'm actually going to put that into the, he wasn't talking about training, but I'm like, I'm going to put that into the training regime. Because for me, that means once a week, hopefully, I can like go online and buy something as because it's a reward for me. So that's just something to finish off with today. Ben, Ryan, do you want to share anything else about the training as far as HIIT or the weight-based training and how people can get benefits, or if there's any other questions, throw them in the chat box, guys. Ryan.
No, good. I think we touched on all of it.
Awesome.
If there's any questions, feel free to shoot me a message.
Ben.
Yeah, same. Covered off everything I had written down. Yeah, shoot me a message if you need as well.
You're going to use the marbles, aren't you, mate?
Man, I've already got the marbles. I don't know what do you mean? That came out ages ago. I don't know. You just said it.
Yeah, for sure. Screw you. All right, guys. Any questions, guys? If not, that's a high five from me to you guys. I'll upload this into the groups later on. You can watch it again. But take all this education, put it into your training. Make sure you do the HIIT sessions. Make sure you do the strength sessions. They both help you get stronger, gain lean mass, also become healthier, live longer, everything, and take the mindset of obstacles make me stronger. So the challenge we're currently facing, we're using it to become our best selves. Catch you later, guys. Have an amazing day.